Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about 5G. We've heard about a lot of different programs that are going on across the board. I want to jump into priorities. And Frank, let's start with you. Can you give us your top two priorities? I know you have a lot of them. Top two priorities for the upcoming year.
Oh, there's lots of them, yeah. I think this first is going to be finish the fielding for each of the bases if we can based on COVID, and actually then use that capability that we have for the bases, take the results of the experiments that we're trying to do, especially for the flight line of the future, for the aircraft maintenance and the AR/VR, and put that into production at the bases. I think that's the way we want to go, as fast as we can, because we want to be able to say, we got results from the experiments, they're now part of programs records, and we're actually using them as fast as we can on the bases, where they actually have to be done.
Fantastic. Lieutenant Colonel, top two priorities for Naval X.
Well, obviously, over this next year, I mentioned a number of pilots that we're doing in 4 different areas. We're going to push all of those out over this year. And it's really about learning, understanding the state of the art of technology, but also the concepts of employment. I've mentioned a lot about installations, but this is not about installations alone. This is about capabilities that we're going to need to bring forward onto the future battlefield. Second priority, remains to expand our current network. I mentioned we turned on the first 5G small cells on the base, but we actually have 25 more, a mix of 25 more 4G and 5G small cells. And Verizon was in the unenviable place of asking, okay, what do you need? And I say, well, we need it all, but we're not quite sure yet what. And so that's where the collaborative partnership comes in. As they looked at our future needs, which is aspirational and not prescriptive, and trying to position themselves just like they're having to do with cities across the country.
Sure.
So you're seeing a mix of our 4G LTE coverage and 26 different small cells being installed on the base.
A lot of activity going on at Naval X. Robert Costello, top two priorities in the upcoming year. It sounds like you all are setting the table for a lot of activity.
Yeah, I think so, Luke, and I totally agree with what everyone said. I mean, my number one priority is always, deliver safe and effective solutions for the operators. So I think as we roll out these solutions, it has to be, as we move it to production, we know how to operate it, we know how to maintain it, we know how to secure it. So there's going to be a big training opportunity for my teams, as well as in the application development teams that I oversee. So my number one priority is deliver effective solutions for the operators. I think our other areas are going to be, how do we life cycle? How do we get our devices up to 5G where it makes sense? How are we doing testing is going to be really key, because I don't want to deploy something that doesn't have really good, it goes from 5G to 4G to Wi-Fi really smoothly. We got to make sure that's all part of it. So testing, and then deep and strong relationships with our operators. We cannot deliver IT solutions without them, and they need to be part of it. So my number one priority is, am I delivering solutions that work for Border Patrol, Office of Field Operations, Air Marine Operations? So those are kind of my priorities. So I think we're going to have training priorities within the Office of Information Technology, as well as how we're refreshing. We've got a lot of 4G and 3G devices out there. What's my game plan to get up to 5G in the markets where it makes sense, that we have good coverage, and where should I concentrate that on in 21?
Yeah, it sounds like you're really focusing on meeting the operators where they are at this point. All right, Sam, how about at GSA? Top priority for GSA going forward?
Yeah, top priority for GSA is facilitating the adoption of the technology, right? You can't argue with the easy button. So for us, it's continuing to address the gaps, particularly in policy, making sure that agencies don't have to worry about the policy aspect. Are we reading the right trade agreements? Is the supply chain policies in line when I buy the technology? And then secondly, making sure that they don't have to worry about, is it secure, right? And then last but not least, we want to make sure that we have the right vendor mix. So we're partnering with industry. So we have the best folks from industry available for government to access the technology.
I really applaud the leadership that GSA has on helping to implement this capability. Well, we always like to wrap up with sort of painting a picture of the future, and we have a few moments left. We're going to start with you, Stephen, over at Spirent, and give us tell us about a vision of the future. What does it look like in a couple of years? And in just a couple of minutes here, tell us what we can look forward to.
Yeah, there's two areas that are really exciting me now, and they've actually started already, but we'll see them sort of come into fruition in the next few years. So one is space communication and non-terrestrial networks, and the other is human-machine interaction with haptic or tactile communications. Now, if you look at space today, we're already starting a new space race with the initial deployments of something called low Earth orbit mega constellations from players like Amazon and SpaceX. Now, these new non-terrestrial networks, they're aiming to deliver ubiquitous global coverage of 5G, sort of reaching the most remote areas of our planet. And the potential they have for both commercial and military application is absolutely immense and really interesting, because they could also lay a foundation for future space communications to actually connect spacecraft en route towards potentially the moon or Mars in the future. And this is all starting today. We're going to see this some of the standardized in the next in the 3GPP releases of the 5G standards in a few years' time. The second area that really excites me, and it's early work being done in research at the moment, but I think we'll see in the next few years, is early haptic or tactile communications. And this is where 5G, the capability of delivering really ultra low and reliable latency communication, getting round trips down really into sub-second, millisecond ranges. Now, this creates this potential for being able to deliver physically tactile experiences remotely. So in other words, a sense of touch could be transported to other locations in real time. Now, the appliance of this could be absolutely game-changing, from remote medical treatments on the battlefield, new immersive training environments for our soldiers, and even new ways to communicate and navigate using haptics. So maybe with these two near future capabilities, we won't actually have to be on the moon to actually touch and feel the moon. That's pretty cool to me.
Sounds impressive. Looking forward to that. Randall, how about over at Verizon? What can we expect in the next couple of years out of Verizon as you're implementing this ecosystem?
Yeah, our expectation is we continue to deliver for like Mr. K and Lieutenant Colonel Newell and all of the services as we expand the 5G network. We're in 35 cities today. We're going to continue to expand that and be in more than 60 by the end of the year. We also have our ultra wideband home network that we're expanding. As I mentioned on a break there, we're going to have more than 20 new 5G devices, and this is all operating on the ultra wideband network in the millimeter wave spectrum. So it's delivering on the promise of 5G and the ultra low band latency round trips that you just heard Stephen mention as well. So it's critical that we deliver so Mr. K and Lieutenant Colonel Newell can deliver on their mission.
Couldn't agree with you more there. Morgan, how about over at CommScope? What can we expect to see in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I think it's been said fairly well. Ubiquity is number one of 5G, and then really blowing the high reliability, low latency promise out. Whether it's something like tactile or whether it's just really the promise of AI or of virtual reality or virtual augmentation, and being able to experience things in ways that they haven't been able to be experienced before. I look at the medical situation that we are today and having a virtual doctor, but not just having a virtual doctor over a screen, but potentially having a physical rendering of it on the type of holopad would be where I see this technology enabling this type of technology to be used. And that could be for military applications, for healthcare applications, for teaching applications. It's just, it's an enabler, low latency, high reliability for all the things that we'll need for tomorrow.
Right. A lot of these things being described, almost sounded like a sci-fi movie at one point, but we realize now with this technology, you can actually do this.
I always say that science fiction is just reality, but a little bit ahead of time.
There you go. Sam, how about at GSA? It sounds like you're right in the thick of it. You're really leading the charge there. What can we expect in a couple of years as GSA helps to lay out this ecosystem?
Yeah, and I think my counterparts have taken a great spin on the technological aspect, and I like the assessment of like being on the moon without being on the moon. I think that's incredible. I'm going to take a market and a business analysis spin to this, which is, we got to understand that the global IT market is $4 trillion, right? And the federal spend within that is only 2% of that, right? So federal influence on a larger, huge ecosystem market is minimal. And so how do we reach efficiencies and still modernize at the same time and take advantage of the ubiquity of the future network, as was just alluded to, right? And I think it's really moving to one network for government and industry, and being able to move to concepts such as zero trust, and being able to tie ourselves away from traditional networks where we own the infrastructure, where we own all of the hardware and components on the network, to really moving to one where we take advantage of what is commercially available to do what the taxpayer is asking the government to do. So really focusing on dual use concepts. How can we use what's commercially available to be more efficient and more effective at what government does?
And those two dimensions are closer than they've ever been. And it's really a pleasure to see that happen. Robert, if I'm an officer coming out of the academy in 2 years, and I'm getting issued all my devices, my firearm and all my computing devices, what's your vision of what that's going to look like in 2 to 3 years?
Sure. Well, it's always hard to predict exactly what it's going to look like. I think one of the things that will be there is, we'll be issuing probably mobile devices to everyone as they come out of the academy in 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's what our officers and agents expect as they're coming through. Now, we're definitely seeing that change. I think the other big thing that we're going to be seeing is a kind of change to the operating space. I think, they're going to be able to be out in the field or out on patrol and have a lot more information than they do right now. I think the other thing that you're going to see too is an increase in citizen and traveler services. So when you disembark from the aircraft, you're going to be able to essentially, process as you walk down the jetway. You're going to present to an officer, and they're going to be able to verify who you are and do all the vetting right there, rather than walking up to a booth and going through the whole process there. So I think citizen services, foreign traveler services, as well as the trade community that CBP works with. I think we're going to see an explosion in the trade space. Being able to verify a container, what's inside the container. Is the container locked? An IoT device now, so we can verify that container wasn't opened from the overseas shipping terminal to the U.S. terminal where that container disembarks. So I think there's going to be a really big change in how CBP does operations due to 5G and IoT being available, including in our trade and travel space, which as you know, is a huge aspect of what CBP does.
Just unlock a whole nother type of capability where everyone in the traveling public and who's ever transporting cargo is certainly going to enjoy that. Lieutenant Colonel, what can we expect to see out of Naval X? What can the sailor expect to see in 2 to 3 years as you're enabling all this fantastic capability?
Yeah, so I want you to picture unmanned logistics systems. I want you to picture Uber and Amazon doing drone delivery. I want you to picture UPS and FedEx doing ground delivery, unmanned. Just 2 weeks ago in a different program that's related, we showed that type of capability in a teaming mechanism. So we had a ground vehicle that was out delivering assets autonomously. We had one drone take off and do the scanning from above, adding to the scanning that the vehicle itself was doing for its own mapping. We had a second drone take off and deliver a battery to a fire team in a secondary location. All of that teaming of 3 different unmanned assets was all in a closed 4G LTE network. That's a mobile network out of a company that was a spin out of Qualcomm called Moto AI. Now I have the benefit of Qualcomm being right outside the gate here. So we've learned a lot through our collaborative relationship with Qualcomm in addition to Verizon. And so through other agencies, through other programs, we're untapping, we're unlocking the future in many, many areas. And you're seeing that cellular is not just about your phone, but it's really going to enable many capabilities, both in the States and on the future, deployments.
especially data transmission, video transmission on the highest order. It's just incredible, the examples that you all are giving. Frank, what can we expect an airman to sort of embrace and enjoy and be aware of in the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little broader than that. I think you're going to see, you know, more sophisticated edge devices, and we all talked about them. Drones are sophisticated edge devices. We have those too, and they're AI ML based. But I think you're going to see an explosion in these edge devices. For instance, you know, you're supposed to use AR, VR. Well, I think you're going to see them in glasses because enough computational power is there without having any lenses associated with just regular glasses, as opposed to anything else. We will have the tactile and have everything else associated with it. And I think that's the explosion that we're going to see. We're going to see now that we have the capability and the power to have that processing capability localized to ourselves. So your phone, your glasses, your Fitbit, anything else is associated with you, your face, your recognition that you need at the border, everything. All those edge devices are going to be more sophisticated than we've ever seen before, and they're going to support the mission of, you know, the Air Force and everybody else, as well as the United States as we go forward.
It really is incredible, the examples that are being described here, both happening today and that are right around the corner. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us on today's program. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.